Tetris is undeniably one of the most iconic, influential, and beloved games of all time. Created by Soviet-era Russian Alexei Pajitnov in like 1563 or whatever, Tetris quickly took the world by storm, immediately revolutionizing the puzzle game genre, quickly becoming one of the best-selling games of all time on 2 separate consoles, and often being credited as a major factor in the original Game Boy's overwhelming success. In the decades that followed the game's initial release, the Tetris brand spread across the entire video game industry like something. Like a disease! What was once a silly little passion project made by a man who probably should have been doing his actual job expanded into an empire spanning nearly 100 titles across dozens of consoles. With so many games existing under the Tetris brand, there were sure to be more than a few games that just didn't fit in. For example, Tetris 99 is a battle royale. Puyo Puyo Tetris prominently features an entirely different game. Tetris Party can be played using a Wii balance board, and Tetris Effect is less of a game than it is an audio and visual experience. But at the end of the day, all of these games are still undeniably Tetris. They all have Tetris in the name, and they all feature the same familiar gameplay that we've gotten used to over the past 500 or so years. So what about the Tetris games that get really wacky? The games that shouldn't even be considered Tetris but still somehow are? What about the games that just didn't come out right? Starting off with a personal favorite, Tetris Attack is one of the few games on the list whose name actually includes the word Tetris. But it is also possibly the game that has the least in common with actual Tetris. Both Tetris and Tetris Attack do share an emphasis on keeping a stack of blocks from reaching the top of an enclosed space, but the similarities end there. Where Tetris has blocks fall from the top of the screen, Tetris Attack has them rising from the bottom. Where Tetris has a series of unique shapes, the blocks in Tetris Attack are uniform. And where Tetris sees you lining up blocks to clear entire lines, Tetris Attack sees you matching blocks to clear smaller sets. This is one of the most fun games I have ever played, but it still has more in common with Candy Crush than it does with actual Tetris. So why is it called Tetris Attack? Well, that is a very long story that I've already told multiple times, so let's keep this simple. When the previously Japanese exclusive Panelipod was brought to the United States, Nintendo of America decided that the game simply wouldn't sell well in the Western market in its current form. So they took drastic steps to ensure the game's success in Western markets. They started by taking advantage of their well-established relationship with the Tetris brand in order to get permission to name the game Tetris Attack. They also tried to take advantage of the unprecedented popularity of their most recent breakout character Yoshi from Yoshi by slapping him all over this stupid little game. This happened during a time period where Nintendo was putting this little fucker on damn near everything in the hopes of getting just one hit game. Yoshi's Cookie, Yoshi's Island, Yoshi's Safari, Yoshi's Topsy Turvy, and of course my personal favorite, Yoshi spends 90 days in county jail. If they were really trying to make this game a success, they probably could have called it Yoshi's Tetris Attack, but they probably thought that would have been a bit much. Not that it would matter though, because Nintendo would soon lose their access to the Tetris license, stopping all future releases of Tetris Attack and forcing the series to undergo a top-to-bottom rebrand. Future titles would experiment with the name Puzzle Challenge before settling on the name Puzzle League and then disappearing off the face of the earth. A damn shame, because Tetris Attack and Pokemon Puzzle League were two of the greatest puzzle games ever made. So on the off chance that there are any Nintendo employees currently watching this video, please, Tetriminos is one of the more interesting games on this list because it bends the video's rules to their breaking point. Sure, this game isn't technically a Tetris, the name and some of its mechanics are very different, but at first glance, it can be kind of hard to tell. Tetriminos has basically everything that makes Tetris a Tetris. Falling blocks, clearing lines, massive combos, but the game still manages to clearly set itself apart from the rest of the franchise by altering the blocks themselves. Sure, all the the usual suspects make an appearance, but there's also some really wacky ones. Single pieces, double pieces, triple pieces, corner pieces, and a permanent reminder that I never really figured out addition. The new blocks actually do a surprisingly great job of setting Tetriminos apart from the rest of the Tetris brand, which is a pretty big surprise given their relative simplicity even when compared to the already simple traditional Tetris blocks. Their addition provides the player with significantly more agency, both in terms of creativity and strategy, resulting in a game that is far easier and slightly more interactive than normal Tetris, while also being every bit as fast-paced and intense. And honestly, it's kinda nice. I definitely prefer traditional Tetris, but the occasional game of Tetriminos is a nice change of pace. Fun fact, this game used to be an arcade exclusive. Fun fact again, it's not anymore. Fun fact a third time, I spent $10 to buy this game specifically for this video. I'm not making that money back. This video will not be making $10. It will not be making any money at all. But wouldn't it be really funny if it did? Make sure to like and subscribe so that I can get monetized and this video can make $10. Hatris is a game where you stack hats on top of heads. If you're wondering how this game could possibly be considered a Tetris, congratulations! You have something in common with every single person who has ever played Hatris. Interestingly enough, this game was actually developed by Tetris creator Alexei Pajitnov, which is likely the reason for its marketing and status as a part of the larger Tetris brand. That being said, someone should probably tell him to stop trying new things. Each hat is worth a certain number of points, and matching 4 of them results in a Hatris clearing the head that the hats are on. Other than that, there isn't really much to say. It's Hatris, a game that definitely exists. No one can say that it doesn't, but maybe it probably shouldn't. Tetrisphere is a fucking weird one. As the name implies, it is a game where you play Tetris in the shape of a sphere. And while this game is damn near unrecognizable as a Tetris, absolutely no one can deny that this is indeed a sphere. The game is very clearly an attempt to adapt the traditional Tetris gameplay to the recently discovered third dimension in order to keep up with all of the brand new 3D games. Of course, this was by no means meant to be the next big step for the Tetris brand. It was more so meant to be just a goofy little experiment that played with the new console generation's groundbreaking capabilities. And as far as goofy little experiments go, this one is pretty fun. The core gameplay revolves around placing, shifting, and matching Tetriminos in order to destroy layers of the sphere and reach its core. Aside from the shapes of the blocks themselves, the game isn't even remotely similar to actual Tetris, but it does still manage to be a lot of fun and one of the most creative puzzle games I have ever played. And while I will admit that it is a bit repetitive and underbaked, I still really like it, and I genuinely believe that if this game had spent a little more time in development, Tetrisphere could have been the next big thing. Or at the very least, it could have been something. Anything. Tetris 2 was initially released and marketed as a direct sequel to the original console release of Tetris. To my knowledge, it is the only game ever allowed the honor of being considered a direct sequel to the original Tetris game, because apparently, this is what Tetris was always meant to be. A weird Dr. Mario clone designed by people that failed to realize that the Dr. Mario pills are uniform for a reason. I mean, seriously. Just look at this game. Can anyone honestly tell me that this wasn't at the very least heavily inspired by the Dirty Doctor and his pill-filled paradise? Now that's not to say that Tetris 2 is a bad game by any means. I mean, it is almost identical to Dr. Mario, which means it's almost perfect. The game itself is a lot of fun, and its visual aesthetic is very charming, but none of that changes the fact that it is very clearly not Tetris. And it isn't quite Dr. Mario either. The game differentiates itself from its inspiration with the use of unique sets of blocks of varying shapes and sizes. And I know what you're probably thinking. Oh! That's where the Tetris part comes in. But no, these aren't even Tetriminos, they're just random ass shapes. That being said, I'm glad they're here. Their unique shapes and random order add a level of difficulty and complexity that's not present in the Dr. Mario franchise. And while they don't always mesh well with Tetris 2's borrowed gameplay, when they work, they really work, resulting in a deceptively unique experience and one of the most fun and addictive puzzle games I have ever played. But I'm not gonna lie, as much as I like this game, I don't really see myself playing it as often as the other games on this list, because in its attempts to differentiate itself from Tetris, it ended up being just too similar to Dr. Mario. And if I wanted to play Dr. Mario, I'd find a way. So there you have it. Every Tetris that isn't actually Tetris that I could possibly think of. And all things considered, I kind of like these games. A lot. Granted, I'd rather be playing actual Tetris than any of these games, with the sole exception of Tetris Attack, which is fucking awesome. But that's not to say that these games aren't good or aren't worth your time, because almost all of them are. Almost. It's just that for the most part, they don't surpass or even live up to the brand that they are trying to be a part of. But at the same time, they really shouldn't have to. Their names are a direct disservice to their own existence. Just comparing them to Tetris takes away from what they are on their own. Each of these games is creative, fun, and unique in their own little ways. They all bring something new to the table, and they collectively make me long for a time long past. A time where these massive video game companies were way more willing to bend their own rules and try something new and experimental. Granted, I understand why these companies aren't willing to do this sort of thing anymore. Unique and creative don't automatically translate to good, and even when they do, being experimental usually means that you're not gonna make a profit anytime soon. But at the same time, damn near all of my favorite games and franchises came from risk and experimentation, and I can't help but wish that we could go back to a time period where that was still the norm of the video game industry. And I cannot believe that it was Tetris 2 and fucking Hatris that made me feel this way. Anyway, whatever. Play more puzzle games and eat your vegetables. I'm gonna go take a nap.